Well, a very good afternoon to everybody joining us on Facebook and YouTube, Twitch also. Today, we're parked on runway 23 right in Manchester, and we're going to go through some of the hydraulic systems on the Airbus 320. What the hydraulic systems does for us, the redundancies, failures, and so on. Very easy in theory, but I think it's much nicer to get the aircraft into the air. We'll switch some of them off and show you exactly what happens. So quick brief, today we are going to take off on runway 23 right in Manchester, where we'll make a left-hand turn actually, and then we'll go towards a point called Dane. At Dane we'll enter the hold so we can get underway and show you exactly what happens, and from there we'll make our approach back into Manchester with the hydraulic failure and show you what the plane is still capable of, which is going to be very impressive. I'll leave that little surprise for later on. So just looking at it very quickly before we depart, down on the bottom screen here we can actually see the hydraulic system. We have it up, and just to give you a quick overview, there's a green system, a blue system, and a yellow system. Each of these are individual to each other, they're separate to each other. They both are driven by different systems, and they do not transfer hydraulic fluid between the yellow, blue to green, or green to yellow. However, there is a little system which can connect them called the PTU, and we'll discuss that later on. Looking up on the overhead panel, we will be looking at switching some of these systems off. So basically it's when we look at hydraulics here on the left hand side, everything above that white line and below that black line there is to do with the hydraulics. So quickly, from the green system is driven by a pump that's on engine number 1, and the yellow system is driven by a pump on engine number 2. We also have a little backup electric pump, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, but the blue system is driven by its own electric pump. The PTU switches here, and this is what we'll be switching on and off once we get departed. So let's get it into the air. Let's take our seat, and once we get going, we'll show you a little bit more about what it's all about. Okay, so before takeoff checks, the flight controls are checked, the briefing and nav aids is set and confirmed for departure off runway 23 right with the left hand turn towards Dane. The flaps is 1 is planned, selected, and 1 plus F is indicating. The V speeds is 150, 56, 58, and a flex of 41 degrees, giving us a flex power setting of 92.6, which is fairly sensible. The ATC code is set, and the ECAM memo is takeoff with no blue indications. Below the line is the cabin are secure, packs and APU is on, and the TCAS is on. Before takeoff checklist is complete. Takeoff. Release the parking brake. Takeoff. So Manflex 41 degrees SRS runway, the auto thrust is blue. Thrust is set. Airspeed live. Cross check 80 knots by the standby. 100 knots. V1. Rotate. Positive rate of climb, checks with gear up. So autopilot in. So still in flex, SRS, nav, autopilot 1. At 1710 feet, the aircraft will then start to accelerate. Don't forget, anybody who has any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. Also like and subscribe, and you can hit that notification bell for when we are boarding at times. Lever climb. Looking at the chat, Lord Ridiculous, yay, lunchtime stream. Hope you're enjoying your day. I hope we get the stream done before you are finished your lunchtime. I'm assuming you're in work right now. Okay, so we have made that left hand turn. We're heading towards the Point Dane. And once the aircraft gets above the S-speed, we'll retract the flap, do our after takeoff checks, and show you some hydraulic issues. S plus increasing, flap 0. And flap indications, looks like it's going to 0. Above the green dot, climb it to 10,000 feet. And after takeoff checks. So the landing gear is up, flaps are retracted, PAX is on, APU is off, and the bar reference is Q&H set. We'll go to 10,000 feet on Q&H today. Normally we transfer over to standard past 5,000 feet in Manchester. Just for the purpose of the video, we leave it on Q&H. So, just looking at our present position before we take our eyes off the screen, we are navigating nicely inbound to this point. The aircraft will pick up at Dane with a right hand turn and will maintain that racetrack pattern until we say otherwise later on. So with that in mind, let's have a little look at the hydraulic systems. We'll keep one eye on the flight and one eye on the hydraulics. Let's call up the hydraulic panel. So, having a look now, it's pretty much the same as what it was on the ground. The engine 1 is driving the pump. This is pump for engine number 1, and that is driving the green system, maintaining 3,000 psi. And the same with the the mechanical pump on engine number 2, which is also maintaining 3,000 psi for the yellow system, and the electric pump is doing it for the blue. So I've been asked many a times different questions on, what happens if you get a hydraulic failure? Well, today we're going to simulate that by switching off the green pump system and show you exactly the way it is set up regards of maintaining pressure. And I want you to keep your eye on the PTU. Is Dane a standard point on the nav system that is used, or geographic point? It's not a stupid question. Dane is actually a point. It's a GPS point. Like, there's thousands and thousands of many other points in there. The only reason I picked the point Dane is that I actually know that it's just south of Manchester, and I don't really want to go too far away, because this is just for demonstration purposes. When we actually configure them for the landing, we'll be able to just pop back into Manchester very quickly. So we can see that the aircraft is now decelerating to the green dot speed, which is exactly what we wanted to do for holding at Dane. So there we go, we've entered a hold at Dane, and so let's get on with it, and we're approaching 10,000 feet, so we're in good shape. So, for today what we're going to do is switch off initially the green hydraulic system. So let's go up here. So we're going along, next of all, we get an indication green low pressure, or green engine 1 pump low pressure. That's simulated by switching off the engine number 1. So now let's have a little look down at what the aircraft tells us. We can see here that the engine number 1 pump is gone. It's gone into amber. However, we are maintaining relative pressure above 2,500 psi. Anything above 2,000 psi is very sufficient regards to keeping the systems going. So what does that mean? If we look at the pressure here in the yellow, this is a power transfer unit. This spins up from hydraulic pressure and gives out hydraulic pressure, and it's actually maintaining nearly what its target of 3,000. When it drops to 2,500, it then spins up further, repressurizing it, and so on, switching on and off. So we've lost the green engine number 1 pump, according to what we're trying to do here, and it doesn't really look like much is actually happening. Well, let's have a look at our ECAM up above. And the ECAM says the green engine 1 pump low pressure. So it's the pump. We have maintained fluid. We haven't lost any fluid, which is quite important. Okay. So if I just clear that here, it actually brings up the diagram to show me the configuration now, what the aircraft is flying in. Clear that again further. And all we have is an operative system for green engine 1 pump. If I was to clear that, effectively, the aircraft is doing very well at this moment in time. There's no major systems lost. Where we can see that is if we call up the flight control page, everything that we see here in green, the green GB there shows GB here shows green system, and the blue system is operating the right aileron. Green and blue system operating the left aileron, and anywhere you see a G is where the green system is actually operating, but it's still in the green. There's no amber there, and that's because it's been power being transferred from the yellow system over. So let's have a look at that again in action. When we switch back on the green system, and everything returns back to normal. So that's exactly the information you would receive if you had a green system pump fail. Now we're going to do something a little different. We're going to switch off the yellow system. So here's the hydraulic panel again. And now we're going to switch off the engine number 2 pump. So that's off. We should have the same kind of configuration over on the right hand side, and we do. The pump is in the amber, and we can see that this time the PTU is operating in the other direction. It's taking the pressure from the green, pumping it through the system here, through the PTU, which spins up, and the fluid that's on this side is being pressurized. So again, it's very straightforward that we do not have much of a problem here. It's not desirable. It's something that you would get fixed immediately, but all it's telling us is that the yellow engine 2 pump is inoperable. Looking at the flight control page, see what is affected. Absolutely nothing. So that is a good sample of redundancy and backup from one system to the other. The same applies for the blue. This time we won't need to go through the blue system. I'll just switch the yellow back on, but I would lift that guard, switch that off, and then we'd have the same effect down below. So effectively, one failure on one side, regardless of a pump only, is a non-event. Let's up the ante a little bit. This time we're going to pretend that the fluid in the green system is actually emptied out. So now we have no actual fluid in the system. To simulate that, we have to switch off the green engine 1 pump. So now the pump is gone, but if we switch off the PTU, it will not transfer power over, and we should get a complete drop in pressure. So let's have a look at now what's going on. We see now that the green system, the fact we have the PTU switched off, we're not allowing it to transfer over pressure from the yellow. We have lost our green system. Now that brings up a different kettle of fish. If we pop back into the flight control page and let's see what we have lost. Flight controls. We have lost very minimal. When you look at this diagram, there's 5 spirals on the left and right. We've only lost spiral number 5 and 1 on each side. We've lost the green hydraulics that's powering the left aileron. However, the blue is doing quite nicely, so that's sufficient. And same on the far side here. We're keeping the blue operating the right aileron. On the pitch trim, we've 2 systems operating that. The green is gone, but the yellow is still working. And on the rudder, we actually have 3 systems operating. The green is gone, blue, yellow. So effectively, we are still in a very good position regardless of flight controls and in the ability of the aircraft to function relatively normal. So to look a little bit deeper into this, we have to clear these 2 indications up here to state. Basically, the aircraft is telling us what has just taken place. So if I press clear and clear that, we come to a status page. It's actually telling me here the anti-skid is not working, the normal brake pressure is not working, but I can use the yellow alternate braking, and the auto brake does not work. So if I left it in that configuration with the whole green system is gone, we have the landing gear gravity extension, so we must put the gear down by gravity extension, there's a little procedure we actually do regards of applying the landing distance procedure, but what I can tell you from experience, Manchester is quite adequate length of a runway for us to return. It's just informing us that when we're extending the slats and the flaps, they're just going to be a little bit slower coming out. They don't have the two systems, they just have the one. Cat 3 single only. That effectively means we can land this plane automatically still. It has that capability. And the reminder on the right hand side, the green hydraulics, spoiler 1 and 5, the Eurodamper 1, Cat 3 2, landing gear with traction, so if we put the gear down, can't come back up, and the reverser 1 is all inoperable. However, that's a pretty decent situation to be in should you lose one system fully regarding the fluid. This is interesting. Roll on, 2 pumps going down. Oh well, we put 2 pumps down. I don't think I'm going to be able to recover the one of them and the failures. But however, let's have a little look and see what happens. Now, when I switch off the yellow and the green, I am going to be expecting autopilot coming out, and there's going to be a lot happening. So let's configure. This will be normally on. Engine 1 pump off, engine 2 pump off. Now, there we go. We have now a very, very interesting situation. Cancel the master warning. It's telling me now that the green and yellow system is low pressure. The yellow electric pump is telling me to switch it on. So switch on the electric pump. Switch on the electric pump. So we have switched on the electric pump for the yellow. Now I'm actually trying to fly the aircraft manually here as well. If you can see on, oh, we're going to stall. Okay. So we'll just keep the aircraft, keep an eye on one left hand side because the autopilot does not work with 2 hydraulic systems gone. Next is hydraulic yellow green engine pump low pressure. We understand that. We're going to clear that. And now flight control alternate protections are lost. That's just to do with the aircraft being able to protect itself. And the speed brake is max speed is 320 knots, so it won't actually fly above that speed. And speed brake do not use. The spoiler is 5 on the Airbus. We have 5 flaps that is on the top of the wing. When we land, you'll actually see them come up and it dumps all the lift, and it's actually used as a little bit of a speed brake as well. So hopefully that explains what the spoilers are. Now I'm going to clear this. I'm down to the information which is just reminding me and telling me what capabilities that the aircraft is able to do, and that's where we are at this moment in time. So I'm going to clear all that. Okay, so what do we have now regards to the hydraulics? We have the electric pump feeding the yellow and feeding a little bit of the green. So as you can see, it's constantly coming in and out there. Won't be able to use the electrics, it's too much because it's going to give us up all these spurious readings. However, we do have a blue system, and the aircraft is very capable of landing on the blue system. It will be a little bit rougher than normal, however, that's exactly what we can do. So let's just reconfigure some of this. It's giving us a land as soon as possible. So we switch that off, switch on the pumps, and we'll go to leave the green system pump off. Let's put the autopilot back in. I should be able to get it back. I should be. It's not giving it to me. No. So basically we're back into a green system fail. Let's try and see at this moment in time, can we get the autopilot back? Okay. AP1. No. AP2. No. If we put both systems back on, we may be able to get it back, and then we can disconnect it again. No. Okay. The autopilot 1 should come back in. That is an actual function of the simulator where it's not going to actually give it back to me. When I say the simulator, I mean Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're using X-Plane today. On the real aircraft, you will be able to get autopilot 1 back in. However, let's leave it off at this moment in time, and let's make an approach then to Manchester. So, descending to, let's put in 3,000 feet and hit thrust idle, open ascent. Okay, there's something serious wrong with the autopilot that's not actually allowing us to do anything. So it's going to have to be a little bit of hand flying this aircraft all the way in. Okay. See, that's what you get for switching off 2 hydraulic pumps. Okay, no, we've got the low will arm and the approach will arm, that's okay. But no autopilot. So to double check and confirm that, if we call back up our systems page here. Status, autopilot, in operation systems, autopilot 1 and 2. That's a bit of a hangover from the double failure. So, yeah, that's not going to work. And do we have everything up there the way we need it? Yep, we do. Let's switch engine number 1 pump off. And the reason we're going to leave that off is because of, to demonstrate that we've got to actually put the gear out manually. So heading on out, we're basically just picking up a northerly track, and we're going to join runway 23 right at approximately around 10 miles with a left-hand turn in. Now the fact there's going to be a hell of a lot to do on the approach into Manchester. I'm going to start configuring the aircraft pretty early, regardless of taking out the flaps, and also there is a procedure to take out the gear manually by turning the handle, which is actually situated down here a few times, and then the gear drops. So let's see what we can do here. So getting ready for the approach. Going to activate the approach phase. 410 feet is I'm going to use as a decision of MDA into Manchester. QNH is 1022. Temperature in Manchester is approximately around 12 degrees, and the wind is straight down the runway at 5 knots. Let's clear that there. Try and keep an eye on the flying bit of it as well. We'll get that flight director back exactly where we need it at the moment. 230 at 5 knots. Hey, don't worry about it. These things happen. These things happen. Now, so we're going to start configuring now. Before they actually take out the first stage of flap, I must actually bring the speed down below. See this? It's an orange equal sign here on the PFD. And if we just enlarge that a little bit there, we got to bring the speed down below that, and then we can actually start taking flaps out. Because if I bring out the flap now, the barber's pole will come down, and technically we will be over speeding the flap. So as it's coming down past the little orange equal sign, speed is below 238 knots. We'll take in flaps 1. And as you can see, that red tape comes all the way down there. We certainly don't want to be over speeding any flaps. Okay, now this time we need to get a little bit below that orange again before we take out the second stage. Now we need to keep coming down. So the ILS is tuned in. It's the India November 109.5. It's telling me I'm 12.6 miles, but it's actually, you can see right behind me there, so it'll be a left-hand turn out around gently, and I will now arm the approach. So we'll pick up the glide slope and pick up the localizer, and then we'll land in Manchester. The speed is low enough to actually take out the gear now. I need to extend and turn this a few times. Let's see how we're doing. We're doing okay. And this is where having 2 people will be very helpful. Whoa. There we go. There's the gear down, coming down now. So left-hand turn in to join that localizer. We're waiting to see this little magenta come off the stop and head towards this lubber line, and once we get it there, we'll maintain the center line of the runway. Same when it comes to, there's the Lodestar. So we have captured it now at the moment. We should see it coming off the stop, and then we'll follow the flight director, keep this vertical bar right in the middle, once we get established and close enough to start going down, we'll see the one at the top here coming down, and we'll keep that on the center line there as well. So the gear is down. We'll actually put the handle down, and we're landing now with, as I say, one engine pump off. So we level out at 3,000 feet. Ooh, the trim. It's well trimmed back. So glide slope star, that means it's captured the glide slope. It's up to me now to keep basically the green crosshairs in the center. And we look outside now and we start getting some visuals in a moment. Let's put out flap 2. Waiting for the speed to reduce a little bit further. And trim the aircraft forward. Due to the trim being all the way back, that may be a reason why the autopilot is not engaging. So low star, flap 3 and flap 4, and let's keep it going down. No. Very difficult to control the aircraft sometimes, especially when you're trying to do a two-man job. Okay, stabilizing now. Let's concentrate on the flying going in. Okay. So landing gears down, flaps are full, and lights square on. So currently we're 9 miles away from the runway. The horizontal diamond is actually indicating we're on the center line. We're lined up in it nicely, and the vertical one is basically telling us we are coming in the profile. Once we get that in the center line, keep this at about 700 feet going down, and once we get it going down, that should stay approximately on that line. So that means we're coming in nicely at the angle that we need to be. What I can tell you is the simulator here is not actually acting like the real plane. Because only for the Lord Ridiculous we switched off the 2 pumps, and now we're not getting some of our systems back. So is there a speed altitude number in your head that leads you to drop the gear and change the flaps? When it comes to the flaps, we normally look at about 12 miles, and we take the flap 1 and then flap 2. We start slowing down to approximately 180 knots to 5.5 miles. Then we'll manage the speed, let the speed come all the way back here to 151 knots, and sometimes a little bit lower depending on the weight of the aircraft. And as it's coming down, gear comes down, flap 3, flap full, and then you're in the landing configuration like we are now.
2000.
Terrible at landing the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000. Hey, listen, so are we all. So while we're in the hold, and while we were in the hold and showing you the different hydraulic problems, it's not quite what you would do in the real world. It would actually take a little bit more time, configure everything correctly, talk to company, talk to basically everybody on board as well, cabin crew, and just let them know your plan of action. Let them know that you're going to be coming in, landing. Is it going to be a little bit of a rough landing? Is it going to be smooth? Are we going to have emergency services? It's all very important to keep the passengers informed as to what's actually going to happen and what visuals they're going to see when they're landing there. The last thing would be a very unpleasant flight for somebody to come all the way in, and next of all they see a fire brigade chasing them down the runway or so on. With this particular failure, one engine, there we go, this is the runways in sight, so the instruments do work at least. With a failure like this, one hydraulic system down, you would have the fire brigade come out and follow you down the runway just in case that you have some hydraulic fluid leaking. It's not something that another aircraft from a different company or wherever would want to land on the runway until that is all cleaned up. So it's very important that think ahead, get everybody involved. If you have a problem, make it everybody else's problem, and truly it does help in a lot. They may have good suggestions for you. They may say to you, listen, this runway 23 right in Manchester is very busy. Would you mind landing on 23 left? I can tell you from experience, it's not an issue to land on the other runway. They don't use that one as often as they use the right. So you wouldn't be causing any delays or any other people behind you wanting to delay their approach until the runway is inspected and you don't have any hydraulic fluid leaking out of the back of the airplane all over the runway. Because effectively, if it was leaking, you'd be closing the runway immediately when you land for a full inspection. Okay, we're 1 mile away, 500 feet. Excuses, I don't have proper hydraulics and I switched off 2 systems and I can't get everything back, so I'm sticking with it. Okay, 400 feet, we are okay, so land green,
minimum.
Visuals red,
glide slope,
and ignore the glide slope, we are visual.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20, retard, 10.
Spoilers, we now have reverses green, we are deselling. That wobble on the runway is purely me. We are slowing down, we're down through 100 knots. And at this point of the flight, you'd be very happy to be back on the runway, and emergency services will be just straight out behind you, following your path to see have you leaked anything onto the runway. Once we get the okay from them, then we taxi off the runway, because you just stop as soon as you can and not spread any leakages should you have them. But in our problem today, we only basically switched off the hydraulic pump and kept all the fluid. Well, I hope that's been informative today for you. I hope you got something from it. And if you have any other questions, pop them into the comments, and do keep an eye on them. We'll be able to answer them at a later date when I'm under less pressure. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button at the moment, please feel free to do, and hit the call bell, and you will know when we are boarding in future for future streams. For now, everybody, take care.